School's out for summer. Hey everyone, Lucamus Prime here. So it is time for another review in my film review series for films based on the books of the same name by Jeff Kinney for the WIMPY Kid franchise. And this time it's going to be for what is the third installment of the films based on the books. And as you probably guessed by the title and the thumbnail, the film I'm going to be reviewing is of course none other than 2012's Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Dog Days. So, this was once again directed by David Bowers, who returned after he directed, of course, my favourite in the franchise, which is Roderick Rules. And this is the third instalment. So, now, how was this film made? So following, of course, the success of the first two films, a third film, of course, was guaranteed, and was, of course, then produced on a budget of $22 million. And filming began in Vancouver, Canada, in August 2011, was completed last October. And then, of course, as well, with many locations as well, including Vancouver, such as the Fair Beam of PNE in Vancouver, where, of course, we see the theme with the ride in the books, which is the Cranium Shaker, among many other places too, such as the Eagle Ridge Pool in Coquitlam, British Columbia, as well. And also the Stevenston Pool, as well, in British Columbia, in Richmond. So, when it comes, of course, to how this film was, of course, released, the film got released, of course, on August 3rd, 2012, and just like its predecessors, the film received mixed reviews, and it also grossed $77.1 million in the box office. When it comes to my reaction to this film, so after I absolutely loved Roderick Rules when I saw it on television, it made me a fan of the franchise, and it made me want to read the books and, of course, watch more movies. So, I actually went to see this film at the cinema in the summer of 2012, and when I saw this film, I once again absolutely loved it, and I would regard it as my second favourite of the franchise when it comes to the movies. So, now, what is this movie about? So, school's out, summer vacation is on. However, Greg may not have the best summer vacation ever. What could go wrong? So, now when it comes, of course, to what I think is great about this film, so, once again, I think it has a really great cast of actors, just like the first two films have. So, Zachary Gordon, of course, reprises his role as Greg Heffley, and he definitely once again gave a really amazing performance as a character, and I would not imagine any actor other than him playing Greg, in my opinion. I think he was a perfect casting, and I think Greg once again had really amazing character development in this movie. And I also definitely, of course, love the return as well of Devon Bostic as my favourite character in the franchise, Roderick. Roderick is my favourite Wimpy Kid character of all time, and Devon Bostic, in my opinion, totally embodies who Roderick is. And I love how in this film, Roderick is now friends with Greg, of course, following the events of the second movie, so I definitely love that. So this is, of course, the only film in the franchise where he doesn't bully Greg. So I love how, of course, he's a friend to Greg in this. And also, as well, I once again love the return of Robert Capron as Rowley Jefferson, who is Greg's best friend. And just like with Greg and Roderick, I would not imagine any actor other than Robert Capron playing Rowley. I still think he's a perfect casting, in my opinion. And I think he totally embodies who Rowley is. And also returning as well, once again, of course, Steve Zahn and Rachel Harris as Frank and Susan Heffley, Greg and Roderick's parents. And they were definitely, in my opinion, once again, perfect castings for their roles, of course. And just like with those characters I mentioned, I would not cast any actor other than those. I think they nailed who they are. And I especially love as well how Frank gets a much bigger role in this too, which I definitely really appreciated. So, you could probably say he's probably the second main character in the film after Greg, I guess, really, because he plays such a really big role in the film. And also returning as well, of course, is Greg's classmates as well at school. So, for example, I definitely once again love the return of Peyton List as Holly Hills, who, of course, is Greg's crush and eventually, of course, his girlfriend. And I think she was once again great in this, as Holly Peyton List was, and did a really great job playing her. And I definitely think that in this film, she and Greg had really great chemistry as well. And I also as well definitely love the return as well of Grayson Russell as Fregley. And while I think Fregley is a weird character and does some pretty disgusting things in this trilogy. I still think Grayson Russell did a really great job playing Fregley and embodying the character from the books, absolutely. And I also love the return of Karan Bhatt as Chirag Gupta as well. And I like how in this as well, he also plays a role, of course, being friends with Greg as well, which I definitely really appreciated. That was definitely really good how he did that. So I did really like how he got to play a role as a friend of Greg. Same thing applies to Fregley as well. And there's many other great actors in this as well, I must say too. And many of them, of course, returning from the first film in supporting roles. And one particular mention I've also got to give as well is also as well to the actor who plays Riley's dad, and that of course is Alfred E. Humphreys as Robert Jefferson. And may Alfred rest in peace, because we unfortunately lost him to brain cancer in 2018. Rest in peace, we lost him way too soon. But for what it is worth, I did like how in this film he got to play a bigger role than he did before, because I think in the first two films he was only reduced to like non-speaking cameo roles really, but in this film, I do like how he got to play a slightly bigger role, of course, in the film. And also, as well, returning as well is also Terence Kelly as Grandpa Heffley as well. It was nice to see him come back as well. And many others as well in this too as well. So, also returning as well is Leigh McNeil, of course, as Patty Farrell, who is Greg's arch enemy. And while I'm not going to deny that she's an unlikable character and is a bully, of course, I still think Leigh McNeil was a perfect casting for Patty, in my opinion. Did a really great job playing Patty. And also as well, aside from as well a great cast of actors as well, I think this film also does a very good job in introducing new characters as well. So one particular one I've got to give attention to is probably that of Holly's sister Heather. Now once again, and just like with Patty, I still think Heather was a very unlikable character in my opinion, but I still think Melissa Roxburgh did a very great job playing her. I think she did a really great job bringing the character to life, so I've got to give praise to her for that. And so I do like how it introduced a new character, of course, and there was also a pretty funny subplot, of course, where Roderick, of course, has a crush on her as well. And it was definitely similar, of course, to Greg's crush on Holly as well. And in addition to that as well, what I think is also great about this movie, aside from a great cast of actors, is also as well how it once again manages to stay loyal to the source material, which I thought was really good. Although, one thing about this film which is interesting is that compared to the first two films, which are direct adaptations of two books each, this film is actually a combination of two books put together into one adaptation, and that is, of course, the third book being The Last Straw, and the fourth book called Dog Days. So, for example, the parts involving Holly, and of course, Frank wanting Greg, of course, to be a better son by taking part in the activity during the summer, of course, is featuring The Last Straw, while the rest of it is based on Dog Days. So, I think for what it is worth, they did a very good job putting these two books together into one film. I think they did a really great job with that, in my opinion. And especially from Last Night's We Watch, I still did a very good job all these years later, because this film is 11 years old, guys, and I think it's aged really well, in my opinion. And also what's great is the characters continue to be their usual likeable selves, and Greg in particular has great character development in this film, because once again, of course, he learns how to be a better something, and in this case, it's being a better son, because in the first film, he of course learns to be a better best friend to Rowley. In the second film, he learns to be a better brother to Roderick, and in this film, he learns how to be a better son. So I definitely really love that. So I think he had really great development in this, and they definitely really did a really great job with it. And I also love how once again they used, of course, Jeff Kinney's cartoons he drew from the book as well in this. Definitely did a very good job showing that on the screen, which was really brilliant. And there's plenty of funny moments in this once again, which I definitely die of laughter at, even when we rewatching it all these years later. Like, so funny. Like, for example, of course, I've already mentioned, of course, the scene on the theme park, and that, of course, involves the ride being the cranium shaker. And it's definitely not a ride that I want to go on anytime soon, so I can totally empathise with Greg and Riley being scared on it. And it's definitely a very funny scene, though, in my opinion. And there's many other funny scenes too. I mean, the opening scene in the pool is pretty funny as well. And also, as well, the scene where Greg and Rowley are playing tennis with Holly and Patty. And even, of course, there's all the scene in the camp towards the end involving, of course, the story of a muddy hand, which was pretty scary. Yeah, I must say, it was still funny at the same time, though. And And I think as well, the film also has its fair share of heartwarming scenes too. For example, of course, the scene where Frank tells Greg he's not going to send him to a prep school called Spag Union, and definitely rightfully so, because Spag Union, from that video that Greg and Roderick watch, is definitely a very scary looking place, goodness me. Because Frank, of course, recalls how a person can learn from their mistakes. So I definitely really like that about Frank in this. And I definitely think they did a really great job, of course, making the characters very likable and giving them great development in this. I thought it was brilliant. And it's also a good message as well for children, because it's about how they should embrace the outside and get out of the house instead of being indoors all day. So I definitely think they did a really great job sending that message. It's a very good message to send out, because Greg, of course, wants to spend the whole summer playing video games. So I think it's good that he, of course, was being encouraged to go outside, which was a good idea. And so, also as well, I also love how, like I mentioned with Roderick, how he and Greg continue to be friends in this, and I do love as well how what Greg learns in the first two films, of course, came to fruition in this film, because obviously, of course, he's a good friend to Rowley in this as well. And when it comes to Roderick, he's also able to get him a gig with his band Loaded Diaper playing at Heather Hills' 16th birthday party, and that made Roderick over the moon, which was definitely very nice. Very heartwarming scene, I must say, because it shows how far Greg has come at being a better brother to Roderick. And in addition to that as well, I also think as well that, for what it is worth, despite of course not being based on the book, which is the end of the Wimpy Kid series, because they're still going with the books, I think this film gave a very satisfying closure to a trilogy, I must say. Because at the end of the film, Greg and Holly finally become a couple, and they're able to spend summer vacation together at the country club. And Greg, of course, says it's going to be the best summer ever. So right there, that was a very happy ending right there, which gave a great closure for the characters. And of course, ended Greg learning his lessons as well, all because he's finally learned how to be, of course, a better son. So I definitely really like that, a lot about that. And I like to pretend that was the end of the films, because let's face it, right, of course, but in the books, the characters don't age, do they? Because it's like a floating timeline where the characters are ageless. So, because in real life, the actors aren't getting any younger, it was inevitable that they'd have to stop making the films eventually, because the actors, of course, would be too old to film scenes. So, with that being said, I personally think that this ending was a perfect way to close the trilogy, really. So, as far as I'm concerned, that, to me, is the end of Wimpy Kid franchise when it comes to the live-action movies, and I really wish it was the case, because, as you guys know, I absolutely despise the film that came after this. But that being said, though, I still absolutely adore this film, and it's, of course, my second favourite franchise, but if I was thinking of any bad qualities with this film, though, so I've already mentioned before about how there's some unlikable characters, of course, such as being Heather Hills, for example, and Patty as well, but there's also others too as well. So one particular character that I'm personally not a fan of is probably Stan Warren, because I think he's pretty annoying, and he's, of course, also an absolute liar, and I was definitely not a fan of him at all, because he wants, of course, to do a camping in a wilderness towards the end, and of course was revealed he was a fake, because in his tent is ready meals and of course luxuries like a television, for example, and a comfy bed. So right there, he was a massive liar, when of course the film made it look as though he wanted, of course, him and his family to be really active and of course camping. So right there, he was exposed to a massive liar, and I personally found him a very annoying character. And I also feel that once again there's loads of product placement in this as well, but personally, what I don't really mind the addition of consoles in this, is which of course were old, such as the PSP and Xbox 360, because it might probably appeal well to fans of this film who of course like to play old consoles, like me, for example, because I recently bought a PS3. So I personally don't have a problem with the consoles, but there's others in this too as well, but thankfully it's nowhere near as much as what comes next. And I also feel as though there is some scenes which I think are pretty weird to watch. So, for example, the scene where a guy who, of course, saves Roderick from who appears to be drowning because he's attempting to get Heather Hills' attention, and he does mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on him. Like, when I watched at the cinema, we were all dying of laughter, really, but looking back at it, it is quite a weird scene, I must say, really. And I think Roderick was pretty reckless, of course, by pretending to drown, because there is better ways of getting somebody's attention than doing that, really, I must say. But nonetheless, though, of course, it got a laugh out of the audience when I saw it at the cinema. And so, but nonetheless, though, I still think this film is great, and I definitely have a lot of fun watching it, and I rewatch it to this day, and I think it's definitely great fun to watch. So, if I was to give Die Wimpy Kid Dog Days a score out of 10, I'd probably give it a very solid score of 8 out of 10. Only because of those feedback qualities such as unlikable characters, and of course, as well, product placements and other things too as well, really. And I guess it might be confusing for fans of a book how this film is covering 2 books and not 1 per movie. But because the cast weren't getting any younger, they probably, of course, wanted to add in as much story as possible, really, to tell with them. So I guess that makes sense, really. And I must say that I definitely do miss the original cast, considering what became a Wimpy Kid franchise after this film, which I'm unfortunately going to be trash talking in next week's video, which I'm not looking forward to, but wish me best of luck, guys. So, anyway, guys, this is me doing my review for Die Wimpy Kid Dog Days from 2012. So, you know the drill, guys. Be sure to give this video a like. Also, be sure to let us know in the comments what you guys think of Die Wimpy Kid Dog Days. If you've seen it, let me know in the comments below what you think of it. Also, be sure to join Team Prime by pressing subscribe and videos to come in the future, and I'll see you all later.